Hello everyone, welcome back to Jikook Magic. What if a commercial lasting less than a minute sparked a discussion far bigger than fashion itself? Jungkook's latest promotional video for Calvin Klein is now playing in various mall stores. The concept is simple: music, a private space, personal expression. Yet within hours, the fandom once again found itself divided. Not because of the clothes, but because of symbols, patterns, and memories that felt too familiar to be coincidence. Is this merely an artistic visual about getting lost in music? Or another chapter in a narrative that has been forming for years within the BTS fandom ecosystem? Today, we're not just talking about an ad. We're talking about patterns, chronology, and why something said to mean nothing at all consistently provokes strong reactions. Because in fandom, symbols never stand alone. In the video, Jungkook walks into a room. No long dialogue, no dramatic narration. He puts on his headphones, presses play, and that's when the shift begins. His body remains in the same space, yet his expression suggests his mind has moved elsewhere. His gaze softens, his shoulders relax, and the world around him gradually fades. The concept is straightforward. The moment music completely captures you. When a song doesn't just play, it isolates. It builds an invisible wall between you and the outside world. Other sounds dissolve. What remains is rhythm, breath, sensation. That's the visual strength of the ad. The environment transforms into something dreamlike, not because magic happens, but because we witness an inner experience. It's a metaphor for temporary escape, for how music becomes a sanctuary in the middle of a crowd. He begins to move, not stage choreography, not a public performance. His movements feel personal, almost intimate, like someone who believes no one is watching. Then comes the contrast. A woman calls out to him. Her voice cuts through the bubble he created. He is asked to stop, to be quiet. In a second, his internal world collapses. He returns to the room, to other people's gazes, to social rules. The structure is simple: internal fantasy versus external reality. Freedom versus restriction. Private space versus surveillance. And this is where fandom discussion expands beyond the commercial. When something appears repeatedly within the same ecosystem, it stops being coincidence and becomes pattern. And patterns invite analysis. In the context of BTS, no narrative exists in a vacuum. Everything evolves over time, through documented moments. Glances on stage, inside jokes, interviews, trips, recorded interactions, and tiny details noticed by those who watch closely. That builds what we might call a narrative with memory. A narrative without memory collapses easily. It relies on one viral edit or dramatic interpretation. But a narrative with a timeline, developed over years, carries different weight. It shifts from, "I like seeing them together," to "we watched this grow." Whether interpreted romantically or not, the structure exists. The chronology exists. The archive exists. And once a narrative becomes solid, comparison becomes inevitable. Fandom isn't only about feelings. It's about symbols. About which moments become iconic. Which theory dominates discussion. Which symbolism resonates strongest. Take 2019, when Jungkook's tattoos became publicly visible and visually formed the letters JM. In a context where those initials had long been associated with Jimin, interpretations emerged naturally within an already established dynamic. Chronology provides stability. Tension arises when similar symbolic logic appears elsewhere but must ignore sequence to survive. This isn't about who is right. It's about structure. When a theory requires time jumps or dismissing history, inconsistency becomes visible, even if emotionally compelling. This is where collective fandom psychology appears. Imitation rarely comes from pure hatred. It often comes from recognition of impact. When one narrative becomes dominant, it becomes a reference point. And reference points set standards. Consider the Japan trip that once became significant in fandom discourse. Japan was no longer just a location. It became emotional lore, continuously referenced and analyzed. Symbols are powerful because of history. When similar symbols appear later within comparable argumentative structures, it feels less like coincidence and more like narrative borrowing. an attempt to absorb already established strength. But history cannot be copied. Structure can be imitated. Format can be adapted. But collective memory, built through shared time, cannot be replicated. So here's the sharper question. If a narrative is considered fake or just fan service, why is it constantly analyzed? Why monitored 24/7? Why invest so much energy both discrediting and reproducing it? Saying it means nothing while dissecting every detail isn't indifference. It's engagement. Obsession often disguises itself as skepticism. In a fandom as massive as BTS, a ship becomes more than fantasy. It becomes identity, community, belonging. When one narrative feels chronologically stronger, collective anxiety seeks balance. An equivalent trip, an equivalent symbol, an equivalent tattoo, an equivalent set of initials. But real strength is built through consistency and time, not comparison. The contradiction appears when something labeled just marketing becomes a template others try to mirror. If it were truly empty, it wouldn't serve as reference. Imitation is the quietest form of acknowledgement, because to imitate is to admit value. That is why patterns repeat. It's rarely coincidence when a strong theory is followed by a parallel version with similar structure. It's rarely coincidence when meaning-laden symbols reappear with new framing. It's rarely coincidence when so much effort goes into dismantling something supposedly irrelevant. Impact cannot be ignored, and anything impossible to ignore will provoke reaction, support, or opposition. In the end, this isn't about proving an absolute romantic truth. It's about recognizing that, as a fandom narrative, it has structure, memory, and accumulated time. Dates do not change. Chronology does not shift. Accumulated time cannot be rewritten. In a world built on symbols and interpretation, origins still matter. That is why replication appears. That is why equivalence feels urgent. That is why skepticism often masks fixation. Competing with something built over years, layer by layer, moment by moment, is never easy. When something becomes too significant to ignore, denial rarely works. What often follows instead is imitation. Ultimately, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about understanding how narratives are built. Not in a day, but through time and memory. Symbols can be imitated. Formats can be copied. But chronology can never be rewritten. And perhaps that is precisely where its power lies. Now I want to hear your thoughts. Do you see this as a standalone aesthetic concept, or part of a pattern we've witnessed for years? Share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next deep analysis on Jikook Magic. Because here, we don't just watch moments. We read their meaning.